Roger, copy.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Happy Thursday. We'll get started here. Yeah, it's a little holiday edition of our town hall. I don't know why I just named a holiday edition and it doesn't actually mean that we're doing anything special. Sorry to disappoint, but just thought I'd mix it up with the title here just to do something new. Uh, but yeah, today we've got two proposals, which is more than we usually have. So we'll have a good amount of stuff to discuss. The first proposal is the Towerbank. I believe there's a typo in the agenda. It says Town Bank, but it should be Towerbank. Towerbank is a bank that we're opening up through MoonDAO to be able to do payments back and forth. And Ryan will be telling us more about that soon. And then the other proposal that we have to discuss today is the MoonDAO Makerspace evolution. For those that know the MoonDAO lore, we have we funded a Makerspace earlier this year, and this is a follow-on proposal to continue developing that makerspace on Roatan, right off the coast of Honduras. Yeah, we'll be getting into both of those, and then later we'll be doing a roundtable project update where we'll go around and update on the currently active MoonDAO projects. So yeah, without further ado, I'll pass it over to Ryan here to walk through the Towerbank Onramp. Ryan, do you need me to share my screen or do you have that set up?
I can try to share my screen here. I guess before I hop into this actual proposal, though, I will just mention that we are working on a new way for the community to submit contributions, and that portal should be alive now. It is being tested. If you go to the MoonDAO homepage and go to the governance tab, there's a tab there to submit contributions. So this is, as we've done in the past with the community coordinate circle, where you can submit things that you've done on behalf of MoonDAO, whether it's like podcast interviews or introductions or meetings or basically any kind of the work you're doing to help promote MoonDAO, help move our mission forward. You can submit those there and get retroactive rewards at the end of this month, so at the end of this quarter. But yeah, like I said, it's a new integration here we're rolling out on the website. So bear with us if there's any bugs. Please do let us know. Of course, reach out to Michi and let him know. But yeah, I'll transition here. Thanks, Michi, for sharing the link there for everyone about the contribution portal. But yeah, so
I'll add one more thing onto that, Ryan,
yeah.
too. Sorry. Because it's a question that we get a lot, and it's that does this contribution need to be something that like is MoonDAO specific? And the answer to that is a resounding no. We want to add wind into the sails of whatever you guys are doing. And it doesn't have to be related directly to MoonDAO, but as long as it falls under the umbrella of MoonDAO's mission, then we want to support you. So don't hesitate to put something in there. We really want to open up this contributions portal to as many people as possible.
Totally. And Eric, yeah, Eric has a question whether people should submit their own contributions or submit someone else's contribution. Generally, it's for submitting your own contribution, things that you've done because it's associated with the wallet within our system. Yeah, citizens, I believe this is all how it'll work here for this quarter, but citizens will be the ones to distribute those rewards to your fellow citizens for the contributions of other people. So you can give to the rest of the community, and in the end, we crunch the numbers and distribute accordingly. So yeah, if you have more questions, Eric, feel free to reach out, or anyone else. But yeah, I'll hop into the Towerbank Onramp proposal here. So this has been kind of an ongoing thing that MoonDAO has been facing as a DAO, trying to either on or off ramp crypto into traditional kind of space entities, particularly being able to on ramp TradFi reimbursements or payments into our Treasury and multi-sig wallet. We have 2 pretty large reimbursements or refunds waiting to come through that we haven't been able to make happen. Earlier, I believe in maybe July or August, we passed a similar proposal, use Skyline Digital based in Europe. And we were able to do a test payment through there, no problem. But right after that, like literally like a week later or something, they had their USD on-ramp flows from the United States into Europe. And we were in a holding pattern there for a while of like, hopefully next week or hopefully next month. And it just still hasn't come to fruition. So yeah, this is kind of a a good learning, because having only one source of on-ramping there can be pretty bad. Obviously, as we've seen, if things just get shut down, we have no alternative. So regardless, I think it would be good to have a second option open to MoonDAO. And this proposal would basically do the same sort of thing that we did with Skyline, where we'd have a the same 2 of 3 multi-sig wallet that we would use to interact with these like TradFi entities. And sorry. And yeah, we would have myself, Pablo, and Mitchie on that wallet. It would be replaced. The third person, obviously I'm serving as an executive officer now, same as Pablo, and then in the future, whoever the third executive officer might be would serve on this wallet. But yeah, the idea is it's just a pass through. We're not going to be like holding funds either in the bank account or in this wallet. And in terms of fees for this entity, they have a 2% commission and any sort of Swift transaction fees. So it is somewhat steep, particularly for larger transfers, but obviously 2%, getting 98% of the money is superior to getting 0% of the money. So yeah, we're already kind of getting the process going in terms of paperwork for Pablo, myself, and Mitchie, getting the ball rolling here. We're just gonna have this proposal go up to the community, make sure everything looks good in their eyes before we actually close the deal and open up this account and proceed with any transaction. So we've got everything kind of queued up and ready to go pending this proposal. But ideally, hopefully in the future, we'll have 2 on-ramp sources that we can use and have some redundancy. And perhaps next year, 2025, we'll see some easing of regulations around things that are kind of holding Skyline Digital from being able to proceed with those sorts of transactions. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I don't know if anyone has any questions, or Pablo, if you want to add anything there. Bill, did you have a question?
I have a question. I'll let Pablo speak if he wants to add anything.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't have too much to add, Ryan, beyond what you said, but just I guess want to underscore or highlight, hey, we've got a couple partners that have owed us money for a while, and they need to get that money off of their books by the end of the year. And what we set up with Skyline many, many months ago was supposed to be the answer to that, but unfortunately, they just weren't able to deliver on that. So this is kind of like something that we're trying to throw in Hail Mary style in order to be able to open up the account before the end of the year, so that these partners can send us the funds and not have it sit in their account for the taxable year. So really important that we get this up and running. And also just want to commend Ryan. He's done a bunch of work, taking a lot of meetings with Towerbank and filling out tons of paperwork to be able to make this happen. So yeah.
This is one of those realities here where, you know, MoonDAO really, it seems like there's an organization we prefer to stay in crypto, but in order to do things with other entities, we have to use fiat because that's the way the world is. Is there, with Skyline Digital, like, should we do a postmortem on understanding like what went wrong, or is it like, yeah, is that something worth doing on our side, or is it just something that completely within Skyline?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I'm not going to say it's solely Skyline, but it's not something that was necessarily that went wrong on our side of it. It's more like the regulatory landscape between like crypto financial entities and also, you know, regulatory landscape in the United States, the political realities.
Right.
So
it's not like a
that we
decision that
faced.
we made that we should, you know, take a lesson from. It's more like from what we had at the time, the decisions that we made, you know, we're not in the same world that we were when those decisions were made.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed to be the best choice at the time. They are not. Skyline is not a bank, whereas Towerbank is actually a bank with traditional banking services. I mean, that could be a potential lesson. I mean, who knows? We could still see some issues with Towerbank, but apparently, you know, they have better kind of rails between the traditional banking sector because they are a bank. They just are a crypto friendly bank. So
Yeah, that's my second question was like, is this the only bank that so we have a treasury and it's significant. And so it kind of surprises me that we're not really, I guess, because I'm relatively new to crypto, you know, large scale at scale. But is this the only bank, or these two, you know, services are the only banking systems that we like? Is that the only way to get? I don't know what I'm asking. It seems like single string, as I guess is the thing that I'm trying to get across. And so right now we're zero string, right? And then so this proposal brings us back to having a single way to interface, but with the fiat economy through a bank. Is that a correct understanding of what the proposal is?
yeah, I mean, it would be at the moment, our single point of contact to do those sorts of transactions. I mean, in terms of what sort of offerings there are, initially we did a number of kind of calls or interviews or whatever with different entities, usually like non-banking entities that are located in different spots around the world that we were referred to from like the MoonDAO or MoonDAO ecosystem. There aren't like a ton of options. So from this like second round of research, after getting frustrated, you know, with how we were not being able to proceed with these transactions, kind of identified our bank as being the next best like traditional banking entity via like the Prospera ecosystem that was also kind of referred to from their startup world down there.
I have one last question.
Mhm.
From these transitions of one system to another, or one service to another, how much does it cost to like how much do we lose in the process of switching from one thing to another?
Right.
And just to contextualize this question, if Towerbank ends up not being the right choice, how much would it cost to switch again?
Well, Okay, it doesn't cost us anything besides time to actually like open up these avenues. It's a cost for the transactions that you do, right? So just for comparison, Skyline, they had like a 1% fee on any transaction. So any on or off ramp, you're looking at a 1% fee across the board. Towerbank in this case is a 2% fee, so it's double. So not great. But I mean, we don't lose anything in terms of cost for what we're doing to get these
Right,
actually
if we
set
decide
up.
that Towerbank isn't,
Right.
maybe it works now, but maybe not, like we're not committing ourselves to something super long term.
Right. We're like adding some redundancy here. Obviously, in the future, we could open up another account, in 2025 if we deemed it necessary, or perhaps like a U.S. banking entity. Yeah, I guess in this case, we're just kind of, putting some more eggs in our basket here, diversifying a little bit so we have more options. But,
Okay.
perhaps regulations in the future would also make it more easy or more approachable to do this in the US, or open just like an exchange account for MoonDAO as opposed to, like a business account for MoonDAO and Coinbase, for example. I mean, there are other options to explore in the future, I guess.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
That answers my questions. Thanks.
yeah. I just wanted to add one last note here, which is yeah, like sometimes we get questions about, okay, why did MoonDAO, for example, like incorporate through MeDAO versus in the United States, or why don't we just open a regular US bank account? And unfortunately, it's just that DAO law is incredibly nascent, and there's some instances where, for example, in Wyoming, they opened up some avenues for DAOs to incorporate, but it's still extremely limited, and it doesn't really necessarily map with what a DAO is on the internet. So MeDAO was kind of the answer to some of those questions, and then from there, opening up a bank account with kind of this unorthodox entity has been a bit of a challenge. So, we're trying to kind of roll with the regulatory landscape. Skyline was working just fine, and then what we were told is essentially that, and if you guys want to look this up, there's something called Operation Choke Point 2.0. That's happening to a bunch of crypto organizations and businesses, where they're basically being boxed out of the regular banking financial system, which is really unfortunate and something that's been ongoing for years. So, it seems as though the U.S. is kind of changing its tone around how that's going to look with incoming administration. So maybe it looks like next year we'll have more kind of like regular US entities and the ability to like do that a little bit easier. But for now, this is kind of just the only way that we can receive these payments.
Cool. Well, yeah, if there's no more questions up here on stage, I mean, feel free to write it in the chat, but that's the gist of it. And, ideally we'll be able to open this kind of account if it's approved before the end of the year, and we're kind of ready to go, ready to open up everything if we get the approval from the community.
Great. Okay. Yeah, and just a reminder, for senators voting, in the proposal thread, if you could give that a thumbs up for temp check or thumbs down. Great. Okay, we've got 6, so we've hit the quorum there. And all right, we can move on to the next proposal. So we'll bring up the team, or whoever wants to be the person answering questions about this proposal. Okay, great. We've got Jason. Great. So I'll tee this up real quick. Like I mentioned, the Makerspace in Rotan is something that MoonDAO did earlier this year. They've done a great job with a small budget, and they're now working to expand the Makerspace with this next proposal. So I'll hand it over to you, Jason. If you could share your screen and kind of show the proposal so people can read along as they're going. You can also find a link in the governance section, the City Hall, under proposals. Yeah, great. Jason, take it away.
I would actually like to have Maven come up as well, because I'm unfortunately remote, so I'm attending via my phone, so I can't really share my screen. I'd love to talk about the issues and perhaps answer any questions. But essentially, it boils down to we're trying to turn this into like a real makerspace. If anybody understands sort of like what a makerspace is, that's essentially a place where there's a lot of like tools and equipment, and it's sort of like almost like a co-working space, but for people building hardware. So really, it's a library of tools. And we decided that it would be nice that instead of just talking about ideas, if we actually built them. And people that were sharing a lot of ideas happen to be also people that were attending in like the Vitalia City pop-up city. And we wanted to take advantage of people that were wanting to do some rapid prototyping and really understanding technology at a deep level, kind of building some things and hacking off some ideas. And so we did this in the first Vitalia. We asked for about like $5 grand. That's really a very tiny amount, really, in order to buy any sort of tooling. But we did the best. We contributed some, and we got that going. This year, for Vitalia, we actually want to make a real makerspace. We want to add in a couple of more high-end tools, do a little bit deeper dives on workshops, and really provide some pragmatic and perhaps long-term value to the community by creating it not just as a temporary experience, but as a permanent testament to what we can do in building like a DeSci research hub. We're doing that in Prospera in the Duna Tower. You can imagine sort of like almost like a mini skyscraper on this Caribbean island, where there's a lot of co-working facilities. There's also going to be like high-end medical treatment clinic doing stuff like stem cells. There's also going to be like a lab being built. There's co-working. It's really an amazing facility. This is where we want to put in the makerspace, and we want to turn it from permanent or from temporary into permanent. We're asking for a little bit more funding because we're actually bringing in somebody with makerspace experience who's also a Honduran. So we can extend capabilities from just a makerspace serving a fringe Web3 sort of digital nomad community to actually becoming a cement and a part of the STEM education network and upskilling the entire island. Our goal is to bring on somebody to actually train them to, be a part of the makerspace and serve in that capacity, and also have the guidance to continue building out our offering and do like a larger raise by the end of Q1. So with that, I'd like to kind of like turn it over to Maven and Manuel, who's going to actually be doing the stewarding of the makerspace, to talk a little bit more, and I'll be available for questions.
Thank you, Jason, and everybody here. Well, as he has expressed, I came to the team, someone that was reaching out to Vitalia as being very interested in this type of meeting. And with these conversations and my experience as an engineer and having already conducted a form of makerspace that was aligned to universities in San Pedro Sula, this is the route that we have drafted together on where we can take now the makerspace to start building what I've gathered from everybody's feedback, including Ryan, Phil, and that there is this dream of creating a space lab hub where multiple DeSci experiments can be done and even create new types of equipment that are not at this moment available. And I believe that's possible here. We have several deep sea conditions that we need to explore and investigate further to see how we can get there for analog missions like NEMO. But right now, with the current tools that we have, the current equipment that we have. The scalability for that is very far at this moment. And we're not saying, okay, let's jump right straight into it. We're looking to this specific funding that we could implement in the first quarter, and also potentially from it get that return on investment to start monetizing through the artisan shop, also activities through the Italia Forever in what they have their program established for the first 2-3 months. And aside of that, I was mentioning that we have started to make a programming that I believe is within the part of the proposal of, let me check, I think it's down below here. No, but it's tied to the budget, because there's a document below that it's related to the budget. And with it, we were discussing this additional type of programming that we could continue beyond the Vital Forever, so we could continue implementing this equipment and create multiple benefits, not just for local community, for what sounds like incentivizing workshops on digital prototyping through certain hardware and software, and not just that also, right, but to provide certain tools for prototyping of people that come to look for building up their startup in Italia, or, well, MoonDAO citizens. And that's one of the things that we want to experiment and discuss further. What would be the best tier of benefits for all the residents, right? And that will be also experimental thing that we'll be doing this first 3 months to make sure that we come to that product market fit, that the resources that we have next to the activities, product or services that we're providing is really providing not just a return of investment, but also value to the rest of the people involved. And that is right now my position, if I can put it that way, on how we are attempting to drive this further. There's more details that we can talk about the weekly revenue generation. And that's something, please, if you have additional feedback, let me know, because we want to make sure that this is viable and feasible for everybody, not just something to get fancy equipment, but also to build value for everyone involved.
Yeah, I'd like to talk just a couple of seconds more on that concept. So I think that we do a lot of things that provide like short-term boosts to either MoonDAO visibility or marketing things and sponsor events, and we have a great time. But we also have to talk about like how do we build like long-term assets and long-term value, and how do we actually impart that throughout the entire network? So we have two like pieces of the space acceleration network currently. We have, okay, become a citizen and then become a team. And really, like, we would kind of like to focus on the latter. Like, how can we serve teams? So what if we did like a little discovery with the teams and say, hey, what tools do you need to get to your product market fit better? How can we, get equipment that you could actually come over here and use and leverage? And how can we use this as sort of like a point where, different people in the MoonDAO community could come together and theoretically build things and do experiments and do research and, create value together in a new and novel way that doesn't exist in other places. And so that's like just one of the considerations that we're doing. But I think in talking with these different teams and people doing stuff like the Analog Astronaut program and other things like that, then we can get an idea of like, how do we actually fine tune the Makerspace to make it even more than just a Makerspace, but really make it more of a MoonDAO Makerspace. And so I think that, having the right kinds of equipment is important, and having some tooling beyond just like, hey, here's how to use a 3D printer is that's part of this conversation that we're now having with this type of project. And how do we create something that is a long-term value accruing asset rather than just a drain on the treasure?
Awesome stuff. I don't have a question about the proposal or the premise, but I have some questions / comments about the proposal. So I'll hold those to make sure that other people can ask questions about the premise of the request, and we don't lose the thread.
Yeah, sounds good. yeah, I mean, if anyone in the audience has questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, or if you'd like to ask them up here on stage, you can do so as well. Yeah, I guess a question that I have for you guys just to kick it off. I see Casox joining. Is what are sort of like top of mind like pieces of equipment that y'all are aiming to get? So there's about 20K of the proposal that will be used to buy equipment, and I'm just curious, what are sort of the bigger ticket items that you guys are targeting? How did the justification come together around the 20K, and why is that the amount?
Sorry, I can assist with that. Yeah, among the higher ones, we have a new machine that we were considered either a laser cutter in itself that could do engraving. And as we were doing adjustments, we stumbled upon one that can do basically two things: have CNC drilling, laser cutting with a lower degree of watts. So we'll depend on the materials we're cutting as well. But the engraving is there, and provide additional 3D printing a module, because on my end, I have a 3D printer, but it will require repairs. So as I work on that to also employ it within the Makerspace and provide additional sources of producing either the types of products or prototypes, we're seeking for this major one that can do this multiple three things at the same time. Now, once again, the scale of it is not as a high-end industrial machine, but for what we're aiming and on the requirements that we have discussed recently, this is one of those that we have reduced its demand, but still bringing a punch for the bucket on this one. The other one would be, and we were considering, and also as part of experience of simulation and training and providing additional interactions with space technology and that type of tasks that you might do in space with games and simulation. We're considering a VR headset. There were two in list. Those two make them $1,200. But as we have come together also on the computer that we'll be have in there to employ this, it could be just needed one, depending on how we establish right now the further OKRs. And the other one would be a set of low-end computers, because we have right now, and we're still getting another equipment that is hardware equipment for digital verification. But as we integrate other people within the space in itself physically, they will need certain screens to either be trained in how to use the software, which they will be implementing to build whatever in the 3D printer, or get trained in other type of simulations. Like I said, perhaps the VR can be used on certain activities or training, but we could provide 2D simulations still with this type of screens. It's a touch screen and low-end computer, and that's around 5 computers taking to 6K. And basically those are and the last one, a telescope. Sorry to forget that one, but that's the last one with $1,600 of estimation. The other are stuff. It's more on microcontrollers, other tools like a projector, and certain things that can be frequently used in multiple courses, events, webinars. Did that answer your question? Or Ryan? Or sorry, Cassick, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. You're asking if that answered his questions. I want to know if it does too.
Yeah, no, that was good. Cassick, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Well, I've been functioning largely as the kind of interface between the MoonDAO Makerspace and other entities. So I did want to talk about some of the kind of added benefits that really haven't been discussed, one of which is new. But, we have a pretty good budget for this pop-up lab that's at Vitalia. And so I got in, a large amount of essentially, I'm calling it a kitchen lab, but we have things like a large mushroom fruiting box, and we have stainless steel tables. We've got a lot enough space. Another thing I had that we got was a air unit, so we can have 10 air exchanges per hour, which is exactly what you need for a makerspace. So the space we have is really great. We've also really been successful in making a lot of partnerships around us. So, for example, there's the robotics factory next door. We've been talking to them about having a wood shop actually over in their area rather than where we're at. We also just recently, I have Elliot Roth as a good friend of mine. He's going to come out and he's going to build a BSL2 like mammalian cell lab, which the makerspace is going to inherit after that's finished. So there are a lot of resources and things here that are kind of just naturally arising. I think we've been really successful at aside from the money we've gotten from MoonDAO, really creating something strong here. As far as the equipment goes, I did go through all the lists with Manuel. I think it's really amazing. He has a really good week-by-week setup of the classes he's going to teach and how the resources that he's talking about supports each one. So if you haven't seen that, I think that's a good place that would answer that question even better. And so with the equipment that's been selected, for my industry, for example, implants, I'm really excited about the idea that, with the CNC and some of the equipment that he can do, we can start actually working with things like titanium enclosures. We can start prototyping things in my industry, which of course, me being on the ground there, that's great for me. But, along the same lines, that's the same thing for Rich Lee, who has a similar company that he's brought out, and a number of other companies that are dealing with similar things. It's like this is a big draw for them. So I think we'll have success monetizing this. Everything's looking pretty good, and that's my 2 cents on it. Thank you.
Yeah, adding my side to that, here is basically the chart of the main stuff that we are looking for to have in this quarter. Some of on the top you might see a scratch because we already have that. So I would just have it here in the list to know what we're counting on for that programming that Kasich was talking about. And for that programming, I have here that sample of it. Like I said, with certain estimations, but it's experimental until we will have it at hand. So we are implemented it once it's happening. So this is a way to tier up how we can start implementing that equipment week by week for the program that Vitalia has, and also find a way to monetize it through the different audiences that we're gonna have: locals, MoonDAO citizens, and Vitalians, basically.
Yeah, I have a couple questions for you guys, I guess. One of them, I think it would be really cool to bring in some more offerings, obviously, and collaborations with teams. I mean, it might not be applicable to most of the teams we have currently at the moment, but hopefully we're going to keep growing out like university teams and more startups that would really be able to utilize these services. So I guess one of my questions would be, how realistic is it that they could like send stuff to this makerspace, have it created and sent back to them? I know it would take a while, but what about the cost factor there? Would this basically be a wash for them, or would it be a substantial savings? What does that look like? And I guess, there are ways that we could have sent to Roatan to be made and prototyped, stay on the island as well, I guess, and interact with other. I mean, we're just kind of spitballing here, not having a tangible thing that we're going to prototype, but I'd like to hear your thoughts there.
I mean, I can take a stab at this. I think that it's really going to depend on the case-by-case basis as to exactly like what type of parts that we're talking about. Obviously, everybody's going to see this is the type of model in the machine that we have. We don't have anything behind sort of a black curtain or that's mysterious. One of the real innovations here is the fact that this makerspace is probably going to be the most transparent makerspace in the entire world. by using the charm wiki and by using these transparency tools and having somebody stewarding this equipment, you're going to know based on the equipment what we're capable of doing. There was also like another question that I'd like to address at the same time. It's like, well, there could be some issues getting materials. And that's true because you're shipping to an island. It takes time. My deep tech startup, Simia Labs, along with Casix, has learned this the hard way. But what that forces us to do is to be like really proactive about like, okay, we need to order these materials. In fact, that's why this proposal is actually happening now, is because we're trying to anticipate and build the experience for Italia and get the materials that we need in order to deliver this premium experience right now, knowing that it's going to take some time to ship things to the island. Depending on what is going to be built is going to be like a matter of cost. It's probably not going to be the absolute cheapest and fastest way to get a part printed. But essentially, if we have the materials here and we have the machines here to do it, it can be done. And I would say the infrastructure problem is actually getting a little bit better. And why is that? Because there's actually a drone delivery service. This is going to be something new that's happening with the Vitalia Prospera Tower, actually, where the Judith Tower is going to have a drone delivery capability from there to La Ceiba, which is the port on the mainland of Honduras. So the ports in Roatan are not so quick, but La Ceiba is actually a pretty big shipping center. And so we're going to be able to actually shortcut the time when it takes to get materials to the Makerspace. And that could happen as soon as mid-January. We're not going to say that that's happening now because it hasn't, but I believe that the ability to get materials will be a little bit upgraded, and especially upgraded over time.
Yeah, I'll speak on this a bit as well. The nice thing about the tech that we're using is that they really don't have to send anything to us, right? So, I mean, clearly they can just send us CAD files or whatever their design files are, and then we would be able to fabricate the design. I hadn't really thought about this as a funding model much, but I do have a friend who that's his entire business is that he has a series of these parts to devices that are hard to get, and people buy them and he prints them on demand. I see no reason why this couldn't be an offering to MoonDAO or a service to MoonDAO. We'd really have to think of where we want to expand, because I think that at that case, we'd want to eventually move into things like, metal printers and things like that, so that we could do these really cool designs, maybe even like small but functioning rocket engines and things, that'd be really cool. I think that the shipping is being solved at this point. It would probably be 3 weeks to get something to the States. But like Jason's saying, with these new solutions, they're looking at, closer to like, hey, it takes us a week to make it, a week to get it to you. So it seems pretty realistic to me as a way to do it.
You guys speak to the cost of doing that? Like, what would it look like for Rochester, New York, get a Twin Lunar, time card project and get it back? Not the timing, but like just the cost. I mean, is it basically a wash of having it in the US type thing, or would it be like a savings to like university students?
No, I doubt it. Honestly, because the thing is, it's a two-way issue in that case, to where it's like, look, we would have to ship any massive materials, that we're working with out of Florida to us, which is a cost, and then shipping it back. Not only do you have the time, but you do have the expense. I would say that's something that has yet to be solved. Once we have the La Ceiba, we can definitely at that point really answer that better. But there's nothing in place, so I'm going to say at this point, no, it probably wouldn't be overall beneficial. You could probably do it and go to a service or something for some kind of similar price, because we have all that at expense. So that is a fair point.
Okay, yeah, just curious there. I mean, obviously, it'd be cool to keep things in the network and have those kind of relationships, but just seeing if it's a cost savings or what timing looks like. I guess another question in terms of this new space, is this like a similar sort of setup where it'd be like a shared? How does that look? I guess where you're looking at going to Duna Tower. What's the relationship there?
The setup's super cool this year. Okay, so I don't, Brian, have you been down since they built Duna Tower?
I haven't been down at all. No.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, so it's a skyscraper in the jungle. It's really pretty. They've got these industrial levels that are like pure, the first 3 levels have these like industrial spaces. So we have about half of the front of the building, and it's all nice and sunny, glass looking out, and then the rest there's like pillars and stuff. So the first thing I noticed is it kind of looks like the way we're setting it up. It already kind of looks like a space station-ish thing, and I've got this artist that's going to be painting it and making it look even more that way. So we do have already. I've already worked through with Prospero. We're going to have an adequate number of adequate ventilation. We have like 6 plugs with like 2 different breaker systems. We have so I really have in place already all of that stuff.
It's worth mentioning that we have a video walkthrough that you can see, or video rendering, so people can actually see the space to get an idea of what we're working with. Of course, the space is unfinished, and we're going to be putting in decorations and infrastructure and all that, but it will give you an idea of the type of facility that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I guess logistically, what is that? Is this like the full lease terms, or how does it work? Of like, I mean, is it being split between multiple partners? Is it just open to everyone in Prospero? I guess, can you just speak to like what the actual structure of that kind of lease looks like?
Oh, the lease. Okay. So that is yet to be determined. I've been speaking with Nicholas. They're really interested in this project. I'm actually reaching out to Prospero directly as well to see, because I think Prospero would be interested in contributing, or doing some trick with equity or something in order to give us a better deal. Right now, I don't remember. I think Jason has it in his numbers already, what the cost, an approximate on the cost. I don't remember off the top of my head, but what I'm hoping to do though is to split it with Vitalia. If we could get the cost down to something like 1,500 or like 2,000, this may be unrealistic numbers, but if we could get it down that way, I think it'd be pretty easy for us to be able to meet what we need to keep it alive. If we did do that, the idea would be that people would have to have a membership of the Makerspace, and it would have a lot of other experiential type benefits. So for example, we're going to set up and we're going to do ice baths, and I know that doesn't sound like it's associated, but remember, we're inheriting a lot of this pop-up lab stuff. So we have a biohacking lab that's going to eventually be part of the Makerspace. So having that combined with these, like, oh, come and take ice baths, and oh, look, we have this, type of stuff. It's all kind of, man, it's all mingled. So we are going to have it to where, because of the kitchen space, people who are Vitalians are still going to have access to that area. They won't be able to access the Makerspace itself or take part in the kind of experiences and things unless they're part of the Makerspace.
Yeah, and just to give some people some transparency as to like where this figure is coming from. Essentially, that sort of retail space is like for that whole of the building is roughly $4,000, and this is going to be occupying about half of that. And you're talking about something close to like around 2,000 square feet, or maybe a little bit more. I will get the exact dimensions of the space. But also you're talking about a higher utility cost. So often there's like common area maintenance fees involved in like renting retail spaces and stuff like that. So that price includes that, but the utilities is kind of one of those bigger cost points. So you're talking about like $2,000 for the space and about roughly $1,000 in electrical consumption. The reason being is in Roatan, the kilowatt hour cost is roughly like 48 to 50 cents. So it's orders of magnitude higher than it would be in sort of like, Texas or something, where you might have like a 6 or 8 cent kilowatt hour type of cost. So that is why that utility cost is a little bit higher. And I put that all as one number. So roughly $3,000 is just the cost of the space itself. And that is probably a little bit of a sweetheart deal for what that space could be rented from, considering the valuation of the building and where it's at and kind of how new it is, because it literally is brand new. Yeah. So the longer that, we can, orchestrate a lease for, obviously the more favorable the terms. But we were working directly with Prospero on that very issue. We have not come to a hard and fast agreement. It may be slightly better than what you see there. We're trying to kind of skew for, worst outcome and see where it goes.
Cool. Pablo, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I I'd like to just kind of give a kind of broad spectrum, feedback around, how I see this proposal, the vision around this, and so I guess like the first thing that I always want to bring it back to is, so what is the benefit to the average citizen and team within MoonDAO? And in my mind, it's a lot of what Ryan was mentioning, which is like, how do the teams within the network, the citizens within the network, how do they interface with the makerspace? Is it logistically feasible for them to send designs, have them made, and then send it back? Like, how are we enabling these teams in the network? I mean, it's difficult to get to Roatan. Is this makerspace only going to benefit individuals that are already there, versus kind of like the distributed nature of what we're trying to build? And so, starting from that problem, I guess the alternatives to be addressed would be, okay, why should we make this big investment in Roatan versus a place that's maybe closer to a launch facility, or already has kind of an existing supply chain around manufacturing? And so that's like one dimension of how I'm seeing this. Another dimension is, so a main responsibility of kind of my job within MoonDAO, as someone on the Senate who's reviewing proposals, is ensuring that the funds that are being allocated to projects are being stewarded properly. And I think you guys have done an amazing job with the 5K initially in the proposal, but at a 75K sized, which was the original proposal, like that requires a level of scrutiny that's above the 5K. So when we're looking at that, the big piece of feedback that I initially had alongside Ryan is, okay, how can we break this up into milestones? Because what milestones gives us is really the ability to set real accountability in terms of how, is this thing actually developing as planned? Because we all know that plans tend to change. So the proposal that came in yesterday at 50K, which was a reduction, is still 2/3 of that total amount that's being kind of just given up front, regardless of any sort of execution on that goal. So what I'd like to see, honestly, is just a proportional funding amount to divide the 75K by 1/4, reduce the amount of equipment you guys are getting, but be able to deliver some real tangible results by the end of that quarter, so that we feel more comfortable at that and say, hey, these guys are stewarding the funds well, and let's continue this proposal. But I think kind of unlocking 50K all at one go here is it's a little too much in my opinion. But that being said, I like overall kind of I believe in this idea. Like, I think that the idea of having a space where many teams, many people within the network can leverage that and have that benefit everyone is great, and I want to see that be executed. But I just want to make sure that we're stewarding the funds appropriately, and that we're actually solving that problem. Are we actually solving the problem of enabling all of these teams in the network to leverage these resources? At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is enable these small teams, right? So we want to make sure that what we're doing isn't just local to whatever place that is, but is really accessible to anyone that's sending in designs and then being able to like actually get something manufactured. So that's the very, very high level. I know I threw a lot in there, but that's just from my mindset at the moment.
Sure. Can I take a couple of seconds to respond to this?
Yeah, sure.
So I appreciate that feedback, and it makes a lot of sense, because you have to be really the fiscal steward for the MoonDAO treasury. And at some point, I guess we have to ask ourselves, like, what are we really trying to build of long-term value? How do we actually start building, assets that are producing things? And I think that if you look through the Makerspace proposal, and you look at the tooling, and you look at the type of workshops that we're trying to do, and you really scrutinize that budget, you're seeing that, we're throwing experiences for 20 people for $300, right? We're actually building things. We're producing deliverables, and we're doing like a variety of classes. And there's no room in that micro budget in order to say, like, okay, we're really trimming this down. Like a makerspace, if we're trying to really be honest about how do we build a makerspace, well, go to a list of MIT and Fab Lab, and you're going to see that a lot of makerspaces are funded by $250,000 to start off with, or higher. And we're trying to do this pretty much on a shoestring budget with as minimal equipment as we can, with pretty much volunteer labor, right? So nobody's really making off and spending this for beer money or whatever. Like, we're counting things down to the brass tacks, and we're shaving it down. And what we're trying to do is prove that we're getting some revenue. We're getting the Vitalia to donate parts to us, and we're trying to get greater sponsors within a very short period of time, while at the same time building the membership model, building the initial traction, creating the KPI in a way to make this a sustainable thing. Most startups, deep tech startups, myself being one of those, I can speak from firsthand knowledge, it takes a long time to even really break even and to get money. And we're kind of showing you a plan in which that the makerspace by the end of a single quarter is generating, roughly $8,000 to $9,000 back from the 50 that we're asking for. So that's fairly good traction to show. Bit of funding left from this 50. We're not spending down to zero according to the projections. So you're going to notice right away that we're really trying to level this place up. And I think at some point we really do have to make one of these types of investments and say hey, we're building a resource where people can go to. It may not be in the heart of New York City, but let me tell you, if we did try and do a New York City style makerspace, the rent alone would be, that budget would be eaten up. So, that's the thing.
I'd like to, once again, Pablo explains in much better words what I wanted to say. Jason, in light of what your response here, I feel like, to me, looking at this proposal, the budget is very well detailed. Your plan is detailed. It has quantifiable, OKRs, and the budgets are shoestring budgets, of course, and as slim as they're going to get. What I feel like, what I'm taking away from Pablo's insight and your response is, I think it would be prudent to at least identify some milestones and that unlock parts of the funding, right? So you've identified here how much some of these things cost, and we can break that. They're broken down. You've identified some of the things you want to stand up and some of the metrics to quantify that. But none of this happens instantly anyway. Is there a way that it can be at least chunked up in a way that doesn't get in the way of progress, but at the same time, the budget accounts for all of these things together, and the proposal itself is broken up into multiple objectives, right? And I'm sure that there's some sort of sequence to them in terms of just practical things. So sorry for rambling. I'm trying to organize my thoughts as I say them. I wonder if there's a way to just mark up some of these things in the milestone format so that just structurally it puts the money where our mouth is, literally, where we I trust you personally. But the accountability thing and leaning into that transparency thing would be to be yeah, I really am optimistic about that you're going to achieve those goals, but let's make it structurally reflect that. When one of these goals is achieved, bam, we have the numbers, we show the thing, everything goes as planned, and at the end of the quarter we can look back and say, wow, this is the same as if we gave you all the money all at once. But in reality, it is structurally reinforcing that value or that virtue of transparency and accountability.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I mean, as far as this goes, I think that, I mean, it's a totally good point that it's like Vitalia and Prospera and all this down in Roatan. It's limited in its kind of like the scope of what it's good for MoonDAO. I mean, if we're talking about like, hey, we should build a facility, let's have a pop-up city or something like this, I'm pretty critical of that for those reasons, but I mean, it's like talking about milestones. I'm not sure if the milestones I'm thinking of are the same that you guys are thinking of. We've definitely been talking about that previously. I don't know how much it went in here, but I mean, really, our milestones were to put on a really good show for Vitalia to start. I mean, that really is our next 2-month goal, is to essentially put on a good show, get a lot of great exposure for MoonDAO. Following that, we wanted to start doing education with some of the local kids. I'd mentioned this to Ryan. I guess we probably haven't spoken on it much, but like I know that there is a youth initiative within MoonDAO, and eventually moving into that, we'd like to be able to do things like summits. I don't think it's a great location for, any major pop-up type events, but I do think it's a great location for having a small, like, space camps and things like that, So we kind of do have a progression like that. But honestly, I think that the reason why they're pushing for the budget up front is simply because of the shipping issues, because we really want to put on this show for Vitalia. We want to do all of these things, and it is ambitious, but and it's kind of like a lot of these things, if we don't get the stuff shipped in time, then that's it. It's kind of, it's impossible. So I think that's the real drive, to try to have it as the upfront thing.
Yeah, I have a question there for the shipping issues as well. From what I know of items being shipped from Honduras back to US or other countries, it's basically already standardized. What in worst case scenarios, you might get a delay of 30 days, but that would depend also on the size of the item, and also that's where you have to consider for you to consider the price, you need to consider the weight. So if we're gonna talking about massive items, that's where we might have some shipping issues. But small items, in fact, if they're also modular items that you can break them down and put them together once they arrive, that shouldn't be a problem. It's just a matter of a certain cost. But let's say something small like a mouse, it costs around 100 to 100. Well, it'd be, let's say, less than $10 to get shipped to US. And its time might take around 10 to 15 days, 20, around that maybe. Does that answer your question about the shipping concern?
Can we also bring Fraser up on stage?
Speaking of phrase, I did see the
yeah, it takes about like 2 weeks to ship things like on and off the island, like give or take. So yeah, and that would be to the US. The mainland is faster sending stuff to the mainland. Yeah.
So the justification here is that, like, you're saying, hey, milestones don't quite work because even though the time spread out over the quarter doesn't really align with the supply chain logistics timing in order to have the stuff ready for the event.
No, that's the discussion right now of the shipping is because we noticed that concern of if we are fabricating stuff in the island, it's time or its actual delivery at the end to whoever requested it would happen or not. That's there might be certain concerns on delivery timing, as with Fraser we pointed out. But now, if we're talking about on restricting more the budget and what we can focus with this, I'm seeing this being directed to more on small scale fabrication. Like, not sure how much of a software approach we're going to take here in terms of training people to know how to use the software, let's say Fusion 360 for 3D printing. But it'll be more of having requests of people to having prototypes or small scale products, because if you're going to have, let's say, certain type of courses or STEAM education, that will also be very highly restricted because of the equipment that we have.
Yeah. But to get back to Phil's question, yes, that's exactly one of the reasons why we have to request the funds now, order the stuff now for Battalion. There's a very real logistics thing that we have to solve. Either we're going to do these workshops and we're going to buy the equipment, or we're not. What we can do, and I'm kind of noticing this now, maybe looking at it through that lens, is that, Battalion is months 1 and 2. So primarily, like the big Battalion experience is January and February, and March is when it's like, okay, there's startups here that are going through the accelerator and building things, but the overall programming from Battalion is going to change into March. So we could sort of adjust the proposal in some ways to affect certain milestones being hit or different programming happening in March when we wanted to reach out to the community and we were going to shift that community focus. Maybe we kind of like axe a little bit to like lower some costs, but we're kind of just as bare as it gets. We don't want to take too much of the funding and say like we're renting this space that's essentially empty because we have no money for equipment to put in there.
I guess I want to clarify what I mean about the milestones thing. It's not about reducing the cost. It's more about spreading it out behind accountability rules. Like, if just to make things less of a gamble, like the sort of if this then that. Like, if you prove that you did this, then here's the rest. Like, great job, continue.
Okay,
type
so
of thing. Is
can I
that
ask? Okay,
something
so an
that-
example of a milestone might be that during this Vitalio event, we create bi-weekly MoonDAO like video updates and publish them or something like that. Would that be
Yeah,
the
I
type
was
of
I was more referring
milestone?
to the key results you already have, right?
Oh,
Like,
okay.
so you already have identified key results that are quantitative.
You just yeah.
Like, what can we either group them wholesale or or kind of massage these key results into chunkified things, so that just like when there's no accountability, which is this upfront cost, you have to buy the stuff and whatever. Then say, like it's a promise, right? Like, and so the in order to continue and progress and make this thing more reinforceable, or sorry, I have another tangent that I stopped myself from going into right now, but yeah, like to yes, you get this money up front because you promise to deliver, XYZ key results or progress up to a certain point that's measurable. And then once you demonstrate that, then great, you're greenlit for the rest, or the next piece, and then the next piece and the next piece. And that allows you to still have this long-term vision, but us to basically reserve the right to hold you accountable and also change on the fly, call an audible and say, hey, the next milestone, let's shift a little bit and still stay flexible instead of the all at once go no go on funding this proposal as is, and then hoping that sorry for rambling a little bit. I'm kind of hijacking Pablo's point, but is that something that, again, this is a lot of there's a large volume here, which is kind of why I think it's worth getting into the weeds in this type of thing.
I have a question. Would it be possible? I know that in previous MoonDAO iterations, that basically it is just like one giant lump sum of cash. What if it was just sort of like a monthly pulse of, what the costs are projected to be? Meaning that, like, we know that, month 1 is essentially like, 10K and whatever. But we also just have to have something.
We've done that with basically salaried work before as well, I think, right? That's the stream concept where you can, is that
right? Yeah, we could certainly do that,
Yeah,
like on a team basis. I think also just to kind of what like Phil thing at here too is feedback on the first proposal and ideation, which was a year long for 75K. That was really my kind of idea for breaking it down into these more like quarterly manageable chunks. Whether it's exactly a quarter, of that 75K, I thought maybe it would be somewhere around 20 to 25K, to be honest, and we'd have some I put on a show for Vitalia, but also have some key delivered during these first 3 quarters beyond just getting equipment, but showing X number of signups into the network or X number of workshops or $500 in revenue, but little milestones like that. And then you come back to the community at the end of Q1 or at the beginning of Q2 and say, okay, here's the next tranche of money. Here's what we were able to do in Q1 with the 25K or something like that. And we just break up the 75K that was originally kind of projected onto a quarter by quarter basis. So there's kind of more accountability and more, ability to adjust or call those audibles, like Phil said, to change strategy or direction as we get more
the
information.
long-term vision, like the long-term vision, the yearly goal, the yearly budget, I'm very optimistic about. I'm very impressed with the work you've put into this and how you've presented it. And then for me, it's more about just like trying to be, I don't know, I guess I've been burned in the past, both as the person trying to deliver and also the person investing, of like the long-term plans. And so I think that I'm looking for a way to make it a little bit more modular so that we can keep this long-term vision and execute on it over time, but with the scope of the contract being much smaller and having many contracts over instead of one large one. That's where that's what I'm kind of gravitating towards.
I want to be as sympathetic to that mindset as possible, because I also can see where you're coming from. I think about it, right? But you have to kind of see things from the point of view of what are you actually like doing. Okay. And what this is it's essentially like a laundromat or an arcade or a coffee shop. Essentially, like you have to have a cappuccino machine, you have to have the arcade machines, and you can't just like magically like have one Pac-Man machine that's going to be a successful arcade. You gotta have multiple machines, right? That's what makes the arcade. And a makerspace is exactly that. It's the value of tool and having a bunch of tools in a place that allows productive work and things to be built. And those machines are expensive, and it's an upfront expense in order to open the doors. And that's basically what we're saying now is like, okay, well, we can do like, stupid hobby stuff, and we have like one 3D printer, but that's really not going to create a sustainable makerspace. We have to have more machines. We have to do multiple things. And that's actually why we brought in Manuel for this project as well, because he's running Makerspace. Okay, guys, you actually need this machine, and we can do the following workshops with this type of machine. And I told him, I'm like, and he came up with $200,000. And I said, whoa. There's no way we can go 200,000. And believe me, he wants to do it, and he has, very justified reasons for scaling it up to that degree. But the reality is like any amount of an appreciable makerspace is going to have these capital machines and capital equipment that you have to deploy. And that's why we sort of need this particular chunk. And this, I feel, it is almost like a minimally viable chunk that we need for Q1 to get going in order to create the number that we're talking about here. I mean, we can just burn capital, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'd like to switch topics to another question I had, or another comment I had about the project. I'm gonna pause here in case people want to tease this apart a little bit more before switching.
Yeah, maybe for further conversation as with you, because I want to understand more what are your more visual representation of your expectations of milestones. What we're showing right now is another way to put that out there as an illustration of how we are setting milestones per month on where we are spending the cash and where we're getting revenue as fast as we can since January. So this is another way to visualize in what we're trying to put milestones. But I'm still doubtful this answers your question, but I would like to maybe in another moment, not necessarily right now, but fully grasp your view of what a milestone could look like, because I do want to break it down into something that we can all achieve together. So that would be my final take about it.
Yeah, I think it's getting more and more into a, hey, teach Phil how to be a good investor, and less about the about the thing that this is not my area of expertise. I'm not, in terms of the investing part, or but like that's kind of the point of MoonDAO, in my opinion, is that I can be an investor in this sort of thing even without being an expert. So I think we should leave it where it is. I think we've broken it apart as much as we can get right now, and I voted on the temperature check. I think there's plenty of detail here, and so I just need. I want to ask one more question and then kind of move on. I'm time constrained right now, so we can.
Yeah, let's go for the second part. No worries. Thanks.
Yeah. The second part is me as a customer for this. I am based in the US, and my dream would be, and I'm doing personal projects, and right now this type of discussion inspired me to look in my drawer and see what I have. And I have a bunch of like breakout boards and Raspberry Pis, and I'm doing a lot of software stuff. I want to be able to like use our stuff instead of PCBWay or Proto Labs or some of these other shops where you send stuff, digital files, and get back physical objects. I really would like to be to dog food this and say like, hey, I'm designing a high altitude balloon right now, right? It's all breakout boards. What if I want a PCB, or what if I need a 3D printed housing for a certain actuator or something? I personally want to use the Symbiont, MoonDAO, Makerspace stuff to get my stuff instead of PCBWay or instead of Proto Labs or whatever. My question is, are there other infrastructures or is there other work that would need to happen in order for me to actually participate like that is outside of the scope of this proposal? Or would the voting yes on this proposal also enable me to do that in its entirety?
Yes, the idea is for that type of service to use our artisan shop and its integration with Hatch protocol. We have here, as you can see at the bottom, that sort of cost to be considered. And initially, as we are scaling this up, making sure what are the pain points or the key necessities for you to fully have a smoothless service.
I'm not worried about smoothness. I'm not worried about turnkey services stuff. I'm more worried, like, are there other, like I storefronts and stuff don't really, those can wait. But in terms of like me having, hey, I have this piece of electronics, or even, I need these electronics and I don't really know how to design a PCB, but here's my breakout board and breadboard. Can you help me? Are those things that I can go to this makerspace for?
Absolutely.
According to
absolutely.
this proposal, or
Yeah.
are there other proposals, other funding, other goals necessary to achieve that goal?
No, okay. So the specific use case you talked about of making the PCB itself. So right now, I don't believe on there we have a pick and place. We don't have like equipment to do full boards and things like that. It's something we've definitely talked about expanding to. Do we have all that, Manuel?
We had it
I don't
like
even
for
know how to design a PCB. I know what KiCad is, and but I buy the breakout boards online and stuff. But they could be PCBs. But right now I only have breakout boards. That part, just getting there, and then sending me the Gerber file that I can send to PCBWay is also something I would be interested in. Is that I guess that, just to make sure I'm clear on what I'm asking, if I vote yes on this proposal and my votes go to MoonDAO giving you money, is that something I can get out of that investment.
Yes. Yes.
As
Like
is, as described here.
yes, though it will be limited to certain things. For example, what a 3D printer can do. Like Castle was saying, for PCB, there was the real estimation of 200 that Jason mentioned, but we took it because it's more detailed on building up a PCB. So for that part, maybe we can do PCB prototyping with the one we have here on estimations. But a high fidelity PCB, we're working with what we have. So, but we can deliver what you're asking for for software.
It's
We could,
expertise, like support and stuff like that. I just don't have a workshop, right? And so I'm like, this is the workshop I wanted, but I'm not in Honduras. So,
Well, I will point out too that
can I still leverage that without leaving my home as a member of MoonDAO?
yeah, as a service, because I'm considering both things, open source software and certain paid software. So we could provide that service for either you need perhaps upskilling on certain things because you want to do this part. And the cost of that is very low. It's mostly software, right? Like having a curriculum that we could interact with you. And once again, the curriculum will dictate a lot of what we can do depending on the equipment and resources that we have to provide certain things. But overall, giving you the service to compensate to what you know, or you just have the idea and you would like to prototype, but you don't know how to do PCB. Yeah, there's software and certain things that have to consider in the overall programming that can tackle that part. Now, in hardware or having the final product, as I would say, it will be mostly prototyping, but we can provide that service.
Use the classes or whatever, like would those classes that you're giving benefit me as a remote person?
Oh, well, they'll be online.
Depending on the course, but we could adapt it to depending on. Yeah, a lot will be experimental. Actually, some of that I was considered in the VR part, but now that we're trimming things down further, it could be done in a certain way, but I would have to interact with you and see what would be one approach that we can take depending on your conditions. But sorry, Kasuk, you were going to say something else.
Oh, no, I'm good. Oh, I was going to point out that talking about the price difference, that was very specific to the 3D printing. So if you're asking me, can we do 3D printing and send it out to people cheaper in mass? The answer is no. The margin's not really very high on that. But when you start moving into other components, things like custom PCB, stuff like that, those are areas where, yes, I mean, for MoonDAO members, like we can do that cheaper. For the equipment that we have, that type of stuff, it's like the margins on are much higher. So, shipping it out from where we're at, people could get a savings on those compared to just buying it. It's just with 3D printing, it's kind of cheap now. It's not that hard to go online and order it.
To contextualize things just a little bit more for other people that may be listening or watching this later, I think we're the only ones left.
Yeah, sorry, Phil. So we're
I'll
like
take this in a major time. I'll take this in a major time. Thank you.
So there's I hate to have more questions because you guys have been up here now for like an hour, and sorry to grill you for so long, but two I think major components that I think would be really useful to clarify as well is the ownership of these assets. Are these owned by a new legal entity? As I saw something about an entity being formed, but then Maven responded in the thread saying that it would be owned by MoonDAO. But I guess that would be great to clarify that. And then second is, is the end goal for this to be a standalone business? And if so, what does that business look like? And
I want to talk through this a little bit, but I don't want to also be the final authority. Because, like Kasuk mentioned, you have all of these people that are basically supporting and basically the MoonDAO Makerspace, and this particular Makerspace in general. We have Vitalia that is giving some equipment. We have our own Symbiont Labs, which has been hosting and, having some equipment there. And then you guys providing the initial grant for the $5,000 of equipment. If you're buying more equipment, of course, that equipment is yours. Okay. The idea was originally in the very first proposal, because we were asking for so much and because this was going to be a different thing, we were thinking about spinning up an entity related to this to do things like pay full-time workers and that kind of thing. And, to make this a new sort of business entity. And that was where, Ryan, I think you got looped into that MOU, that memorandum of understanding. But that also requires, deploying capital towards, creation of a brand new entity with Ixion, and that was somewhere like around $5,000. And we were just trying to, cut down on the expenses. So we said, well, if we're going to sort of kick the can down the road and maybe make this more of a 3-month and a quarter thing, then let's raise what we need to do the 3-quarter or the 1-quarter experience. And then let's do that new jukebox type of funding where other people can participate and then form the new entity then. And that entity should be, partially owned by MoonDAO, obviously. And, but perhaps like this more of a crowdfunding type of thing. And, it's its own thing that eventually spins out of this and it becomes sort of like, more of a space game kind of thing is what we were kind of, moving towards. I think all of those directions are valid, and that's going to be something that we discover during Q1 as to what is the next evolution of the space look like. But for ownership, any equipment that you are actually buying now is yours.
Okay. All right, got it. So ownership would be in MoonDAO's end. I guess that would be good to have in the proposal, and then revenue is something that is kind of would be worked out as you guys go, as you guys develop identity, figuring out whether or not this is a business or some money coming in from all of that.
Yeah. Essentially, what we could say is that the revenue that is left in the treasury, should we decide to end the project at the end of quarter or whatever, could flow back into the MoonDAO treasury. Essentially, this was just additional runway, and it was lowering the amount that we would need to ask for the next quarter to continue operations. If you look at the projections, sorry, I'm in a very noisy area right now. If you look at the projections, we're making roughly $9,000 at the end of Q3. And, we're burning through, a significant portion of the 50, but mainly because the carrying cost of that space, as you can see, is roughly like $18,000 a month with all the expenses. However, like if we're not constantly buying new equipment, that number could go down over time. So the idea is to get the revenues such that from the membership model that it sustains the space and is able to make more gradual purchases over time. But equipment is still equipment cost. That's what the big cost of a makerspace is.
Got it. Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys for fielding so many questions. I really and for having so many people here as well to field those questions. I think we can roll in more discussion on the proposal itself if there are more questions, or keep discussing in the after party and Major Tom if people would like to. But yeah, I think it's probably good to move this forward to the Senate temp check. So if any Senate member that's stuck around, it looks like we lost a couple people, and it's been a long discussion, so I don't blame them. but it's been a great one. You guys answered a ton of great questions. I've got a bunch more clarity around this. Sounds like Phil does as well. So yeah, I think we should vote here in the temp check. If someone can post the link. Well,
we appreciate you guys too for being, really diving in and asking the hard questions. That makes us sort of feel confident.
Take these questions as a sign of respect, and also not like doubt. I think a lot of times there's this sense of if people are questioning.
Not at all.
It's like, oh, we're doubting or not trusting or something like that. But no, it's because really want it to succeed, and so kicking the tires as much as I can to make sure it succeeds.
100%, and obviously we want to be rolling with the punches too, and open to feedback and iteration. This is really all about iteration and just iterating from a smaller thing into a more sustainable thing over time. Hopefully, that's our goal here.
Awesome. Well, it looks like it's at quorum, and it's going to pass over to Snapshot. So we'll have the community vote. Awesome. Thanks, y'all. So the last thing here on the agenda is to go through the projects. But yeah, I guess also before we jump into that, if there are any other thoughts or closing statements from y'all, feel free. But yeah, if not, we'll roll right through into the projects.
No, from my end, just to thank you guys for the feedback. In fact, I do appreciate it. I'm an experienced product manager, and getting that hard feedback has become actually a pillar to making sure that I deliver good products. So to me, it was fantastic to get all your thoughts, because I do want to make sure this works out and becomes successful. So with your thoughts, your ideas to get aligned into that goal, it's to me what I'm looking for. So it was a great conversation. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Yeah. Likewise, yeah. Thank you all for a very robust and well thought out proposal. All right. Well, we'll keep moving in here with project updates. I can kick it off with some Deprize updates. So we're still on track to get this full demo for the Deprize by the end of the quarter. One of the big components of that is a prediction market around basically. I've said this many times, but in case anyone here is unfamiliar with the project, we're creating these competitions where people can use a prediction market in order to determine where funds should flow between different competitors. And so this has been something that we've been working on for a bit. Also included in that scope is improving the space acceleration network, which the prize system leverages, and then also the retroactives, which are also on track to coming online by the end of the quarter. So yeah, I don't have too much to say other than lots of progress is being made. We're still on track to hitting everything by the end of the quarter. It's the holidays are coming up, so we're trying to get everything kind of ready and set before people start disappearing. Yeah, we've had a couple more teams and citizens come through, and we're still aiming to hit the 100 citizen mark by the end of the quarter. We're at around 72, so we'll see if you guys want to do a bit of a holiday Christmas push. Tell your family, tell your friends that are in the space community about MoonDAO. I think we might be able to get there as a community to the 100 mark, and then we can throw a little party and do a little thing for everyone. So yeah, excited for that. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep my remarks here brief because I know we've been here for about an hour and a half now. Ryan, I'll pass it over to you to talk about the second astronaut support. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. No major updates. I know we're expecting some updates from Jerome on the documentary this weekend, and Titan's really doing a great job getting out all the space flown patches and stickers. I think the first ones have already gone out, but it's kind of a long list. So yeah, be patient, but they're starting to go out now. Got it. Oh, and Eiman did a great I-24 space on Twitter earlier this week on Monday, I think. That's on Twitter, linked to an announcement, and also participated in the overview roundtable with Frank White, which was a great conversation this week. If you guys aren't familiar with the overview roundtable, you should definitely check it out. It's got a real vibrant space community as well.
Awesome. And last but not least, Phil, any updates on the time card work?
Not from the students. They're still on break. I met with me and Ashley met with Rachel from Open Lunar today to talk about 2025. Timekeeping, lunar timekeeping is on the roadmap for Open Lunar next year. So I've had some really cool conversations. Open Lunar has a ton of really interesting connections. Apparently, apparently the board is really excited about the timekeeping ideas too. And if you take a look at who's on the board, that is like, I'm starstruck. So yeah, no other updates except for next year's going to be fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Phil. Okay. All right. Well, I think with open floor now that we have Major Tom, if people want to flow into there and hang out and have other things that they want to talk about, share with the community, I'll be in there, Major Tom, hanging out for a bit. But yeah, otherwise, we're all dismissed. If you guys have spots you got to be at, yeah, feel free to jump out. But if you want to hang out and talk, join us in Major Tom. So see you guys there.
Thanks all.
Later.
Thanks all. Bye.
Welcome to MoonDAO, a revolutionary governance model and mission-oriented community that's reshaping collaboration in the space industry. Our mission is to create a self-sustaining, self-governing settlement on the moon to act as a launch point into the cosmos. MoonDAO is governed like a nation, with its own economy, constitution, voting system, treasury, elections, and senate. But internet native, and so without the limitations of geography. In 2022, we sent our first member to space, showcasing our model's capacity for real-world impact. Now, we're implementing key solutions for global collaboration in the space industry. We offer a borderless, permissionless platform that enables everyday people to participate in the future of space development and exploration. Be part of our lunar legacy and join the MoonDAO movement today.